My name's Cliff Simon. I'm the CRO of Carabiner Group, part of SBI Growth. We've got a great panel for you guys today. We're going to dig into some interesting topics around how you can increase revenue growth by improving database hygiene, like some just core fundamentals and ways to be thinking about agentic AI. And the 5 things we want you to be able to take away from today are understanding the fundamentals of these things. How do you build for AI readiness? What does that really look like in the real world? Like, yes, there's all these great theoretical things that people keep trying to sell us, but what are people actually doing and using? What's the ongoing ripple effect of that adoption? And we'll take a look at like that sort of entire journey from data cleanup all the way through to pipeline creation, which is something that a lot of people struggle with today. Let's go around the horn and just everyone do your intros. Ed, you want to get us started?
Sure. I'm Ed King. I'm the CEO and founder of OpenPrice. We are a RevOps data automation platform. We help you keep your data clean and automate all your go-to-market back office processes.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Ed. Brian?
Yeah, I'm Brian Hare. I'm the principal solutions architect at Norex. Norex, we are a SaaS company whose platform is specific to paid media cross-channel execution. So a lot of what I'm doing is ensuring that our clients are having what they need in order to drive these successful campaigns. And obviously, clean CRM is a huge part of that.
Awesome. Thanks. Rob?
Yeah, I'm Rob Walter, head of revenue operations for Sunday Sky. We are a personalized video platform that takes your data and automatically personalizes video at the point of render. SundaySky.com.
And Reed?
Reed Scoggins. I'm the VP of Strategic Alliances and Cloudingo. We're a SaaS company that specializes in helping you make the most of your Salesforce data. So, being able to merge, convert, update, and delete, trying to make it usable.
Fantastic. Thanks. Again, the point of today is that we want to help people think about data and how you can actually use it to drive pipeline, ultimately drive revenue. Right? Dirty data is not just an operational nuisance, it's a pipeline killer. I've seen this firsthand. I've seen on teams that I've had to run where it becomes this massive challenge and your salespeople aren't doing the things that you've paid them to do, which is to actually spend time with your customers and sell. They're spending time doing all these operational things and working through spreadsheets or trying to clean things up. And it just wastes time. It degrades your leads. It forces you to do things that aren't efficient. And today we're going to be talking about how leading companies are solving this with a really strong foundation around data and some really smart automations around how you use agentic AI. I think there's like this whole ether of like, oh my God, agentic. But we're going to walk through how you can actually do that. So as far as like the first question for you guys, what are the core fundamentals of database hygiene and why do they matter for revenue growth?
I mean, I think, one of the core fundamentals that I think is really you have to know your GTM motion. I'm kind of taking this from the perspective of, you're somebody new coming into the role in a company, right? You're not sure of what kind of data cleanliness you have, what level data cleanliness you have. So, figure out your GTM motion. First of all, like what are the key data points you need to have clean in the system? And really thinking like, do you have a leads marketing model? Do you go for like contacts and accounts, that sort of thing? Then for that, what are the critical data points that you need for your ICP? Go into like auditing, all that kind of stuff for your duplicates. How are they getting created? How is the bad data getting, in the system in the first place? Those are, I think, some basic things, that you need to do.
And just add to a little bit, for larger organizations, one of the things we see all the time where it actually becomes a blocker to effective data quality program is ownership. It's just unclear who owns what. And worse yet is when multiple teams think they own that data, then you get a case where basically people overriding each other's data, or you get a case where a team can consistently become blockers to certain things. So for example, account data is very fundamental to most companies, and oftentimes sales operations owns the account data. And so oftentimes you'll see that marketing operation, because they don't own the account data, but a lot of things they do, like lead to account matching, depends on good, accurate, clean account data, if your account data is messed up and that becomes the bottleneck, you often have to people often have to end up working around it. And we don't see companies spending enough time focusing on the kind of just overall governance, the ownership structure, and they often end up essentially again because it's kind of messed up ownership. You often end up with just broken processes and just like I said, a lot of just bottlenecks that prevent even people who knows how to get things done, they can't get it done because Coco they don't own that and they're being blocked.
Yeah, and I think just to piggyback that too, like I think on the ownership side is certainly um, a huge key in that, and it's I think one of the things that we see with our customers is not so much. I guess is just a little bit of paralysis when we do get somebody that is either voluntold that this is now part of their you own this piece of cleaning up duplicates, right? And then it's incorporating all the other teams, and how do we um, make sense of, well, what do we as a business now decide, just from the perspective of duplicates, like what is a duplicate, and then what do we need to factor in for who owns this field, what does marketing care about, what does our sales team actually care about, when we're going through and trying to actually execute the project that you went out and you know in the case you bought a tool for, or you're trying to get to a place of better clean data.
And I think the last thing I throw in is that often the processes, who owns what pieces of the pie, but also just how you get to that ownership, and making sure that everyone's kind of playing by the same set of rules, and ensuring that the clean data that's coming in isn't then being dirtied up because there's a step missing, or someone jumped the gun on their responsibilities without it being fully vetted out by the previous team. So I think one of the key points is to get yourself to a system, but then also ensure that everyone's following along with that system. It's not often it's going to be the easiest for your sales and sales ops team and your marketing team, but hitting a few extra buttons and a few extra clicks ultimately lead to a much more harmonic approach for the entire sales organization.
Well, I think part of it too is like you're putting this filter on the pool, right? You can't just expect to clean it out constantly and not have bad stuff be put back in. Like you have to train people, right? And how do you do that? You have to find the things that they care about. Then how do we as leaders come back through and say, if you are doing these things, these are the benefits for you, right? Not saying all salespeople are coin operated. I know many have been. If you can show them how they can make more money or how they can succeed and have the prestige of being at the top of the leaderboard, whatever that they might be looking for through good data, I think that's a big unlock. Go ahead, Ed, you were gonna say something.
Yeah, Reed brought up an interesting, right? The whole paralysis. Now, ops as a profession is still decently new, they're less than 10 years old. And a lot of folks are new to the job and they haven't exactly dealt with data quality for the last 10 years. And historically in larger companies, this is the job of the IT team. So a lot of them, I do see a lot of our customer prospect, they do have that whole paralysis. When they look at it, the data quality problem, they can see how bad it is. They certainly hear the sales and marketing complain about it, but a lot of them is like, where do I even start? Right. So here's a framework we like to offer to our customers. I call it the sinking boat framework. Right. If you're in a boat that's leaking water, is sinking, what do? You do it in 3 steps. First thing you do, you plug the hole. Right. Most people's immediate reaction is to start bailing water. No, you find where the leak is. You plug the leak first. Right. So and then you bail water. Then you try to do more permanent fixes. So what does that mean in a data quality world, right? So plugging a hole means finding where bad data is coming into your system first. Try to stop that, right? Stand up, we jokingly call you stand up data firewalls, right? So basically, for example, in a lot of companies where massive data is coming in is through lists. So marketing team load lists. Some companies, God bless them, have less salespeople load massive lists. And so we all know how bad those lists are. And so shut that down, right? So you put some governance around that. Even if it means in the short term, you have to have a central team to do all the loading, eventually go to more of a self-service type of governed solution. But stop in other areas like form fills, partners. So figure out where are these massive amount of data come into your system. Try to protect that and not shut them down, but protect those entry points first. So make sure you at least stop introducing really bad data, right? Then that will buy you the time to, now you can have time to actually go try to clean up what's already in your system. And then the third pass is once things are kind of more in a healthier state, you can now start thinking about more permanent solutions, maybe do some re-architecting, some of those emergency floods that you put in to stop the both on the leak, now maybe go back and putting a better, more permanent solution. So that's the approach we recommend people use to, just get going, right? Instead of just sitting there staring at a problem and says, oh God, where do I start?
Real quick, for those who are on, if you could answer the poll, tell us who is owning your data hygiene process in your company today. You can fill that on the side, and we can chat about that in a minute. Ed, I think you've done a really good segue for us to our second question, which was what systems, processes, ownership structures could be or should be in place to maintain strong data hygiene over time, right? You've hinted heavily at some tactical ways to be thinking about process. Curious to get others' takes on how you think about that from a systems perspective or a structures perspective.
So I would say, Ed, one thing that I really enjoyed you saying is really to incentivize individuals who need to use these platforms. And I think that, getting to a point where you can get a group of individuals onto the same course and working towards the same goal, it's from the start's not always the easiest approach, but the easy thing to do would be to find an approach that works that then creates results for your sales team, for your marketing team, so that it gets to the point where it's the goal is no longer to get a X amount of leads into a platform, it's to get X amount of qualified leads into the platform. And we start worrying more about quality versus quantity. So when you have to get to these points, it's always going to be a bit rocky when you're starting. I think if you're a large organization or a small organization, but when you do get to a point where people can see the results and those results are directly affecting their day to day, that's where you start getting the buy-in that you need. So you may not have the right answer from the get-go. I think one of the most important parts is to get to some kind of results that you can either use to reinforce what you're trying to do or use to start testing on your next approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's key, right? Like there has to be a like what's in it for me sort of thing. And if you can take a bite out of the elephant first, and that could be around again, like what are those fields that you need for routing? What do you need? What fields does marketing need to evaluate whether it's a good lead? What fields does sales need to know if it's like within the ICP? And then look at like take the time to build in the processes to set those values in a clean way, because maybe you've inherited an org that has 50 industry values and you're only you've whittled down you've changed your ICP 5 times in the last 5 years, and now you're looking at just a subset of those, right? So how can we look at build the automation in place, and take, like I like to make separate fields for the enrichment providers that we have. So I have a separate set of like SalesIntel fields that bring that data in, so I know when it was updated and where it came from, and then use that in an automation sort of enrichment waterfall to pick from the best source and then surface it. So start with those ICP fields, get some clear buy-in, then say, hey, look, these are clean, these are good. And then that will then snowball, I think, that effect of like, yeah, we need clean data. We're not just gonna, again, import any list. We need to figure out like how we're getting stuff in and support RevOps and how to build the automation to get that stuff in. Event trade shows. Oh, that's another system, right? That's a whole other conversation that I've been dealing with for years. But you need, from the source, you need good data, right? Who's at the booth? Who's taking in those titles and the companies, and making sure it's clean from there too,
Yeah,
So
and
I think it's
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, I think you guys have all hit on really good points, and I think just taking it from the perspective of the clients that I deal with, like it, building that consensus is certainly one of the big challenges. But I think from the Cloudingo side, like we try to just really simplify it for them. Like you need, like you guys have said, we've just got to get going. Like we have to start with the most simple, egregious stuff that we can all agree on, and then we can start stair stepping it into, well, okay, well now this use case and this use case and this use case, because I do think that can be one of the best first steps is just making a first step, because a lot of people, when you get in a big room with a lot of people that have a lot of stake in the data, everybody's got fringe cases that are going to come up, and it's like, well, that those are all valid and we need to address those, but we can start with a really simple framework, and be very build a really nice tight consensus first, and then start trying to funnel out to all these other fringe use cases. And so that usually it does help us kind of start moving the ball forward, which is, I think, what you guys have all perfectly articulated. It's just, let's start moving the ball forward.
Yeah, two tactics we have seen, works decently well. Once from the bottom up, if you're trying to get support from the organization from the bottom up, we often tell people just do a very quick time study on where do your ops team spend their time, and you'll be shocked how much manual work people are doing. You'll absolutely just be shocked. And figure out where the manual times are going. And a lot of them, for example, your event team, if they're the one responsible for not sending out a crappy list, sending in a crappy list, you'll be shocked how much time they're spending literally just cleaning up a spreadsheet, right? So figure out where the time spent are, and if you can at least quickly automate away some of those highly manual tasks, that's a quick way to get kind of build a support from the ground up for people to say, hey, you guys are actually making my life easier. So from the top down, one tactic I find interesting, again, has worked decent amount of time, is that how do you, a lot of times it's hard to get executive sponsorship to data quality, right? They just don't see it. Every report they see has been filtered through some poor data analyst, working on it for 20 hours to make everything look pretty. But the thing we have here a lot, I'm sure you guys all sat in meetings where, let's say, sales presented some reports and marketing side, where the hell did you get that data from, right? There's all this, in fact, before you can even look at the analysis, you spend half an hour just arguing where the data come from, right? And so actually in our company, for example, I would say about 2 years ago, I literally banned sales and marketing from presenting their own reports. So all reports have to be generated by RevOps, right? So RevOps designate the data steward. So we need to all get, you have to, if you can educate your leadership to say, hey, we need to get past the, where did you get the data from phase? And now we can spend all the time we want, interpreting, spinning the data, right? Sales and marketing always will spin the data to their favor. That's fine. But I'd rather my leadership spending time trying to interpret and spin the data than spend half the meeting trying to argue where the hell did the data come from. I don't believe your numbers, right? So if and anybody being in leadership position probably has either you being the one being told that, I don't, you being the case on one part, on side of party or the other, or maybe you're the one looking at data submitted to you, is like, what the hell, And so that's a way to potentially get your management to care, because every senior manager has been in those shoes before. It's like, what you guys just present me complete different pictures. I don't know who to believe. So if you can say, hey, getting your focus on the data, getting ownership clean, for example, potentially stand up a RevOps team that owns that absolute ownership over the data set. This is what it gets you, Mr. CEO, COO, is that we no longer have every analytics meeting where we spend half the time arguing what the hell the data came from.
Careful, Ed, we're going to start debating who should RevOps report into now.
That's another webinar.
Well, it was interesting to see, right? We just had the poll come through, and there's a pretty even split of the different departments that are owning the actual data here. Good mix between IT, RevOps, and other. We're going to get into the third question here, but before we do, I'd love to be able to have the next poll come up. Give us an understanding of where your readiness gap is for agentic AI, right? We've talked about how you set the foundation. Once that foundation is set, how do you build off of that and start effectively leveraging agentic? Reed, do you want to give it a shot?
How do we get ready for agentic AI, or how do we know we're ready?
Now, how do we effectively leverage it, right? So we've talked about getting ready for it. We've talked about putting in the foundational data pieces and cleaning up the foundation so that we can start using agentic, right? Because it pulls from those fields, it pulls from real language. How do we then go about actually doing it?
Well, I mean, I think, from leveraging AI, I think for us is about kind of putting it into the right category, right? It's trying to see like what is AI really good at? Where can we leverage it and make it the most time effective and get us to a place where we're not like in that high risk category of just like unleashing AI on our database and just saying like, all right, we are fully agentic AI type of shop. Because I think, to your question, it's like, well, the foundation is something that we're going to be constantly doubling down on and trying to always solidify, because it's always changing. I think even for like as you're using like an enrichment product, it's like, well, we've got so and so is moving to the new place. We got to make sure that we're keeping up with that and not allowing those foundations to degrade, so that we can, whether it's as simple as like, hey, we need to know that this person who's a part of our core team at X account is now at somebody else, and now we've got the threat of potentially losing this account, and we're also we got this great opportunity as well, and so we need to be on top of that. And so I guess I think it's that kind of stuff. It's trying to for a lot of our customers and for us, I think internally, it's like trying to put AI in its right category, right? It's like it's really good at research. It's really good at like being able to track those kinds of small changes that people are already doing, and so doing it that way, as opposed to like just blasting everybody that is in our database with an email and giving them all kinds of, whether it's, I don't know, a discount or it's just like inviting them to a webinar that they're like, this does not apply to me, right? And so, it's that kind of deal that I think is our focus.
Okay. So I can add to that. So the three piece of main guidance we provide to our customer who try to adopt AI, especially in the ops, the data kind of world. The first one really is you have to find the right use case, like Reed said, right? So AI is not the panacea for everything. And the big thing you have to determine is really a trade-off between predictability and flexibility, right? The AI model we're working with today, the Gen AI, is largely a statistical model. It's non-deterministic. So if the use case you're looking at basically has a very low tolerance for variability, and a good example of this, anybody in the financial services world, for example, they know your customer process, right? If you deviate from that process, you just broke the law, right? That's an extreme example of there's no variation allowed. Yeah, applying AI in that world is going to be extremely tricky, right? Even a normal corporate process like approving APO, right? So having the option to, hey, we got $1 million PO going through, and say if the agent just randomly decided that the CEO's approval is not necessary, right? And that's not acceptable. And where after a lot of processes like outbound prospecting, you can tolerate, some badly written generated email, some incorrect data being researched. So it's really, you have to determine, again, whatever you're thinking about, what's that trade-off between the requirement for predictable outcomes versus the flexibility of it? What's the trade-off? Is that acceptable? The second thing is really is measurement, right? So there's a lot of FOMO right now about AI. People just jumping in, just now, we should all be experimenting AI. Well, I'm the biggest proponent that we should all be playing with AI. But if you go to actually deploy into an enterprise solution, you have to be able to say, hey, can I actually, this is not just AI, this is like almost everything we do. Like, can you measure the outcome? Can you actually have a learning process? So if you, for example, just, hey, we're going to deploy AI agents to do this personalization for outbound outreach, okay, fine. You should do A/B testing, right? What's the response rate for the email you send out without the AI personalization versus the ones with? You know what? If it doesn't, then great, nice learning experience, but let's try something else, right? Or if you see a little boost and maybe try something different. So we see a lot of people just jumping into AI, just almost enjoying the experience of building something cool, but can't really tell you whether what something they just spent the last 30 months building, did it actually make any impact at all, right? And the third point is really and you may not be shocked that some of these processes is actually can be very difficult to measure the outcome, the impact. So if right off the bat you come to the conclusion that we actually not going to be able to measure the outcome, then that may not be the best place to start, screwing around with AI. The third one is really, is your data ready, right? So besides the quality of the data, of course, AI is probably the most data dependent technology we have ever seen in our lifetime. So needless to say, data quality is important, but there's also other things to think about AI, especially for larger enterprise, is even if your data quality is good, are you actually allowed to use that data, right? One of the big things we're seeing right now with a lot of large company is that the management is mandating everybody use AI. Then InfoSec's like, no, you're not. You're not sending our CRM data out to copy, OpenAI and Anthropic, and you got to wait for us to build something internally, right? So you want to make sure not only the quality of the data is good, but you also, depends on the use case, you actually have the blessing, if you will, make sure you're complying with security and compliance mandates, which a lot of folks either willingly or knowingly or unknowingly neglecting, which can get you into trouble.
Yeah, that AI governance piece is really important, especially as you go to scale. Curious, Brian, what are you guys seeing as far as how your teams are preparing to actually use agentic?
Yeah. So I have the luck and sometimes the headache of working with some of the medium-sized teams in this kind of scenario. And it's exactly what Ed said. It's AI is so exciting, and it's so everyone's amped to be able to talk to their supervisor and say, here's how I'm applying AI. So there's teams that I've worked with that basically have said, well, work closely with the SalesIntel data, and we've brought in and we've enriched it, and we have the fields that we want. So now I can just tell an agent to go find me the right leads, tell an agent to route this to the right direction. And ultimately, it's data in, data out, but we have to give guidelines to the AI to start. It's not going to go from, lake at the top of the mountain to ocean at the bottom just like that. We have to help dig the trench of the river to it so that it has a better understanding of where it's got to go. Eventually, the water will start flowing. It'll, follow the natural setup in order to get from this lake to this ocean. But the idea that, great, I did everything I needed in, the pre-steps. I get to flip a switch. I get to ask a quick prompt, and I'm going to have so many qualified leads. I won't know what to do with it. It's a education piece that has to be kind of walked through. And, ultimately I have to go to teams and basically explain, listen, we're going to build a great airplane, but we got to build it while it's flying. So be prepared for that. Keep your logic hat on, really think about what we can do in order to get the results that you're looking for. If it works, awesome. Again, we'll reinforce it. If it doesn't work, that's fine. We'll keep testing. But let's build the guideline. Let's build, mark the trail, if you will, and then allow the deep learning to make decisions once it has a better understanding of where it needs to go. So again, easy to talk about on a webinar, less easy to talk about in an intro call, but it is a very important piece that everyone has to keep in mind. We're not at the point where it's flip a switch and then go enjoy your coffee at the table and come back and you have everything ready for you. You still need to, make sure that you're driving it where you want it to go.
Okay, so we're not living in the world of Jetsons, right? But there are practical ways that people are using AI today. I'd love to hear from you guys what you're seeing that's actually working.
So I can chime in. Again, I'm kind of focused in the data world. So it's on the outbound prospecting side, that's probably where you've seen a lot of the activities, right? People trying to automate away the SDR's job. We don't touch that as much. And that's also the world where it kind of makes sense that you can have more activities there simply because when this thing we talked about earlier about you trading off predictability versus flexibility, that's the part of the business you can have some risk tolerance, right? So because in some ways, outbound is more of a numbers game. So if you send out 1,000 emails and 15% of them are got inaccurate stuff, inaccurate personalization in there, okay, fine, nobody dies. And you do the trade-off. If that can bump your conversion rate by 5%, is worth doing. The trade-off is worth it. On the data management side is really you almost at the other extreme of the risk tolerance is usually very low to zero, right? And one thing I think people kind of tie back to the whole measurement comment earlier. A good example is whenever you try to use AI for data quality stuff, which we are, you have to walk in knowing the technology today, the LLM technology, it hallucinates. It does not follow instructions sometimes. And there's also cases where companies like Cloudflare, for example, are actually standing up defensive countermeasures. So if they sense an agent is not respecting the crawling policies, they will actively feed fake data to the agent. Right? So you have to understand that when you use AI for any kind of data gathering, for example, there's a good percentage of data it comes back with is not real. It's literally made up or fake or being fed the wrong data. So you may have vendors, who are selling agent technologies heavily, essentially telling you that, hey, the agent can replace your data vendors like SalesIntel, right? But if you start to dig into that question a little deeper, it's like, okay, but if I know that today's AI agent has the limitation, hallucination, all that, and so how are you going to make sure the data you get from the agent's calling back is actually accurate? This goes back to the measurement part. Can you actually measure it? Can you actually QA it? Now, just because another thing about agent AI today is that just because the data passed the eye test, it doesn't mean it's accurate. AI is really good today at showing you something that looks right. but it's actually wrong. I mean, I think one of the AI search engines came out with a study, something to the extent that between 40 to 60% of citations returned are fake links. Okay, so literally, how are you going to verify that and measure it? And if you have no ways of being able to measure and validate what agent is doing, then again, it comes back to the questions that if you can measure it, how can you trust deploying something like this into it? And it goes back to the question that, for example, your Cocoa existing method using a data vendor, that's kind of what they do for you, right? That they not only gather information for you, they also do the QA, they do the validation. Are you ready to take on that responsibility yourself? And if you are, how are you going to do it, right? So don't. This is where again the sexiness of AI can sound really promising, but when you start digging into where things are being used, be very careful. And just one last thing. So what we have seen success in is that, well, in terms of data management, today the technology is really good as a basically easy to use natural language processing engine. So what the one area we've seen the most impact is use it to process unstructured data and to turn it into structured data, do stuff like classification, segmentation, uh, that type of stuff right now works pretty well. But in terms of, for example, actually relying on it to do real data crawling, data acquisition, that one, like I said, unless you have a way to validate the data coming back, I don't think it's at a point you can really trust it.
Yeah, and I think just to Ed's point, like I feel like the trend has been very much like there is a camp that is very ready to embrace this, and they are doing it in all different ways. And I agree. Like the outbound engine seems like the one that you can easily deploy these agents to you know because it does feel very low risk. It doesn't feel like we're worst case scenario, how many people have run a bad marketing campaign, right? Like that's not that big a deal. But I think also what has really been eye opening is like, Ed had pointed this out. And it certainly got me thinking just in general about how hostile these email servers that are also using AI are becoming because of we've got it coming one way. The battle, the battle has now begun, and it's only getting worse and worse, even on the outbound side. And I think as you scale up and the bigger company that you are, the more downside risk that you have. Like, just because you're sending off a bunch of low risk outbound campaigns doesn't mean that you're also not accidentally maybe doing that to some of your own customers, which is actually that's where things can get really risky. And so it is very much a balancing game of trying to figure out exactly what I said. Do we have a good feedback loop? Is there something there that we can make sure, number one, it's working, and if it's not working, we can shut it off quickly so that we can make the change or iterate to something that makes sense for where it's going to be applied best today, tomorrow, and in the future.
I tend to look at this through my own historical scope within ad tech and paid ads. And, I'm lucky that our platform is rooted in AI and driving efficiency through AI. So I've worked with teams who have felt strongly that the CRM information, even though it's on a, Google Excel doc versus a actual platform, it's clean, it's exactly what they need. They work hard to tediously keep this up to date. I've seen them run campaigns that have similar, slightly better performance. I've also seen teams who have had that mindset who then started working with a data enrichment team, started bringing in more data. They started seeing how their campaigns, picked up a notch from there. And then even teams who then make sure that the feedback loop is coming across the board, where a team is, okay, I really want to be able to get this persona to convert. But then after, call it 3 months, they realize this persona also converts, but it converts at a much higher, cost per lead, cost per acquisition, whatever. I'm sorry, much lower cost per lead, cost per acquisition, and their lifetime value is much higher. So teams that then take this additional CRM, call it a post-conversion CRM information, pass it back, feed that into the AI, they're ultimately seeing what they want to see. Well, great, they're getting the converters, they're grabbing the low-hanging fruit. They're also ensuring that they're bucketing the fruit that's higher up in the tree, but ultimately bigger and more delicious. So you see it at work there. It's case studies that we could build out specific to the amount of data that's going in and being fed backwards. So yeah, it's important to have when you are touting AI as a core competency from your side. It's important to be able to speak to that with backed results that ultimately show off. Yeah, it's the more data is going to help your campaign. It's going to allow your dollar to go farther. You're going to be able to take learnings from this to then put into your email marketing campaigns. You're going to be able to use this to revise your 3Q strategy, your 2026 strategy, whatever it might be. So again, I think that a lot of this can really get tied back to results matter. Results get people moving, and the better you can quantify those results and dive into the granularity of it, the easier it's going to be to get everyone on board to do it the way that makes the most sense versus the way that they're most comfortable doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. We're coming up on time before Q&A. Let's do one more question. I think it's really important. And Ed, you touched on this a little bit, but how do teams go back and show reporting or the level of efficacy, right? The ultimate, like the ROI on these different solutions. Like, what are you guys seeing there?
Yeah, the biggest difficulty there in measurement is it's actually not knowing what you want to measure. It's actually having the data to actually produce the measurement. If I give you the right data, anybody can use Excel, right? So the difficulty we historically see in AI, measuring AI is going to be no different. Is one from day one. That's why we said you have to start thinking about how do you measure results before you even start, because oftentimes you actually have to go out of your way to capture the data to even generate that measurement at the end, especially if you're looking at historical improvement. If you want to see trending, for example, how did my database quality improve? How did my conversion improve, say, over the last 8 quarters? Most CRMs don't do a good job of giving you that historical data. You actually have to do what we call instrumentation. You actually have to put in extra configurations, extra automation, even potentially adding technologies. You may have to take data snapshots. You may have to do additional things, just log the data somewhere else. So that's the thing I think most people fall into the trap of not thinking that through. And so what happens is that you can have a fabulous project where everything got better, but you can't show the results at the end because you didn't capture the before. You only have the after, right? So it's hard to go to your boss and say, hey, I improved the database quality by something. We can all agree it's better now, right? Like, yeah, because you didn't capture the before to actually show the measurement. So that's the thing I encourage people to think about early on is how are you gonna what data do you need, and how are you actually gonna make sure you have that data as you go through the project.
I know for us, when we go into a customer, the first thing we do is grab a baseline, right?
Yes.
What's your deal velocity? What are your conversion rates across all the sales cycle? Implementation, velocity, time to value, right? You have to get that understanding of where an organization is to even have a chance to be able to say, as a consultant or as someone internally trying to be able to drive change management, to be able to drive the effectiveness of that. And I think from a RevOps, it's so difficult because you don't have the ability to sell. You don't have the ability to go make sure renewals are happening. But you can affect the systems and the ways that people work and putting those systems in place, tracking the right things, and all these things by region, by segment, by geo, by team, by product, right? So that way you can really get granular with it and understand if I'm having the desired effect. I might be seeing an uptick in the leads that are coming through because we started going to a new market, but we never went to that market before, right? Or we're driving better messaging and efficacy into a certain persona set. So like maybe we should start focusing on those people more as opposed, the CFO more than the CRO, whatever it might be. I think those are really important. If everyone could fill out the last poll here, we'll hop into the Q&A. We've got a couple questions in here. The first one was of the fundamentals which we saw companies going after, right, or that we've talked about here. Which ones are companies most overlooking? And when they are being overlooked, what's a really quick win to put a gap in there? That's sort of an analogy before. How do I slap some duct tape on this thing?
Yeah, I mean, a quick win. The one thing kind of my go-to is that pick the one report that gets the most visibility, right? For example, one of our customer, they have a top of the funnel attribution report that has to be generated by the 5th day of the month. It goes straight up to CMO, and we've been told that people's career gets affected by that report, right? And so find out what that report is. Find out what's the struggle to get that report to be accurate, to be on time, and solve that problem, right? If you can make sure that the most visible report becomes better and you get credit for it, and that's quickest way to get a quick win for yourself, but also just get everybody to embrace it. So like I said, find the most high visibility report and see if you can make it better.
Anyone else want to chime in on that one? We can move on to question 2. Question 2, was the biggest cultural or change management hurdle that you've encountered when rolling out Agentic AI, and how did you overcome it?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, from my end, I think that I've seen the common mindset of, oh, well, salespeople are lazy. They don't want to do this work. They, just want to go out. They want to sell. And ultimately, yes, you want your salespeople to go out and sell anyway. So what easy wins basically is, okay, if we feel that way, how do you set up that agentic pipeline to ensure that what the salesperson needs to sell is getting put in front of them? So now you need buy-in from your executive team. Your executive team is worried about putting too many manual tasks on a sales team. Great. Here's proof that I can get those leads in front of the salesperson, at the start of the day, at the start of the week, whatever it needs to be. And here are the results. You see that we've booked more meetings, we've driven the pipeline velocity, we've reduced it by X amount of days, whatever it might be. So yeah, it's I think one of the common themes of this conversation has been you just have to do it. You have to do something, take that first step. And I think that's something like that is an easy thing. If you can find something that your executive team feels strongly about, and you can show how easy it can be to fix that specific thing, if it's a problem or if it's not a problem, then the buy-in becomes much easier, because not only did you solve that problem, but you have not your executive team happier, and you have your sales team happier, your marketing team's happier, they have less to deal with when it comes to the sales team, and it's just that snowballing effect. So if you need to kick it off, find something that you can get a quick win on and allow that to snowball.
Like probably every CEO out there, I'm telling my team they need to use more AI. And one thing we have learned, or I have discovered, because when I am personally trying to use more AI, I'm also fairly still involved with product development. The thing that kind of surprised me when I started digging is how hard it is to use AI correctly. And all the hype out there make you think like using AI is it's just easy peasy. It's not, especially when you try to apply to what the ops people do on the back end, on the data, on the process. So I end up making a decision that we end up hiring a prompt engineer. And the goal is to actually to help everybody in the company to use AI to speed up that learning curve and also help our customer, our partners to do that, because it's when you get AI to work properly, trust me, is way harder than what people make it seem to be. And so if your company is looking to embrace AI, you need to speed up that learning curve. It does not make sense from a company's ROI standpoint, right? From a CEO's chair, it makes no sense that every employee has to go struggle through this on their own. It just does not make sense. So get an AI resource that can spend the time. It is that person's day job to get really good with AI and have that person help everybody to come up to speed. You don't want, whether you're a 10% company, whether you're a 100% company or a 10,000 person company, it makes no sense that everybody has to struggle through it on their own.
Ed, off the cuff question, but how
Yeah.
much does someone like that get paid? What's compensation for a role like that?
All over the place, because it's a very small pool of talent, because there's nobody having 10 years of AI prompt engineering experience. Most
Yeah.
likely you'll find people who's probably on the younger side. Right? In fact, the one we hired, he's only been out of school for about a year, right? But they grew up with this stuff. They done a lot of tinkering on their own. So no, you're probably looking at kind of a mid-range salary for like a regular ops person, right? But like I said, the pool is very limited, and just looking for more people who have done stuff on their own, because it's not, very few people is going to have that on their resume. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, last quick question that it came through. Rob, I saw that you'd answered it text, but maybe you could elaborate a little bit more. Question was, could you outline a simple monthly or quarterly audit checklist teams can adopt to keep the systems accountable?
Yeah, I mean, how many times do you get asked a question like, why is this showing up this way, right? Or why is this data not right, or something, like this report's wrong or something. I always try to get out in front of that. And so I've got these, dashboards of zero that, I create in Salesforce. And if there's nothing shows up, awesome. So it's opposite of what you usually want to see in a report, right? And you make a dashboard of all these things, and basically they're usually like object based. So lead, data, opportunity, dashboard, and contacts and accounts. So I can get out ahead of that stuff. So if I'm seeing several things show up, and also subscribing to the reports, right? So if the report has more than one, one or more count on it, then you get emailed, and you can look at it before anybody else can see it and figure out like what's going on. So that helps me, and I check those at least once a week, if not more, if I get the email. And so that's just really helped me stay on top of a lot of that stuff.
Cool. Appreciate that. I haven't heard that one before. Make the zero reports. That's pretty cool. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining and for being a part of this. Real quick, around the horn, if folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that? Ed?
LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to reach out.
Yeah, LinkedIn.
Brian, same.
LinkedIn.
Yeah. Rob? Okay. Yeah, we're all on LinkedIn. Damn. Okay. Well, it's the game now, right? Yeah, but you can find all of us on LinkedIn. Thank you so much to SalesIntel for hosting this and for making a space to have this conversation. And yeah, if you guys have any other questions out there, or what folks who've been on live or people who are going to check out the recording, please feel free to reach out to Ed, Brian, Reed, Rob, or myself, and happy to help you guys think through these problems. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah.